So whether you've got a Hoya head on your gift list, or you're trying to figure out what to do with grandma's check or your annual bonus, or just deciding to treat yourself to a little something special this season, join me with a tasty beverage of your choice close to hand while we take a look at 7 great beginner Hoyas. And before we get into the list, I've got another Hoya in bloom this week. This is Hoya occultata. And if I can get it to hold still, there we go. I know it's not much, but it's its first time blooming, and there's a whole story about getting this Hoya, so I'm kind of pleased about that and wanted to share those really neat blooms with you. And now, let's get on with the list. And so the reason for the list. I want people who are growing Hoyas to be successful. I want people who are thinking about growing Hoyas to be successful with it, to not be afraid and to have some guidelines for starting their collection. So I came up with 4 criteria for putting a plant on the best beginner Hoya list. Price. It should be reasonably priced. And again, that's based upon my experience here in the US. Your experience wherever you live may be different. Availability. How easy is it to find these Hoyas? And again, that's based upon my experience here in the US. I've got nothing else to go by. 3, ease of care. These should be easy to take care of, should not require anything special or difficult, don't require cabinets or grow tents or extra humidity or anything like that. And 4, what I'm calling bloomability, that your plant will bloom in a reasonable time frame. It will bloom early on for you and give you that reinforcement that you're doing something right and that this can be a fun hobby. So, with your tasty beverage close to hand, let's get the show on the road. As usual, they're lined up over here, so let's get started. And these plants are in no particular order, just the order in which I thought of them and wrote them down. So any of them are good, best beginner plants. And we have to start off the list with Hoya lacunosa. Now, Hoya lacunosa is native to Malaysia, Borneo, Java, Malaya, and Sumatra, and the Philippines and Thailand. And it was first published in 1827 in Bijdragen tot de flora van Nederlandisch-Indië, Contributions to the Flora of the Dutch East Indies by Carl Ludwig von Bloom. There are lots and lots and lots of varieties of lacunosa. They are, in my experience, a great little plant. They bloom early on, and this one is just getting ready to start blooming. And I'll put some pictures over here of what lacunosa blooms look like. The blooms pretty much look the same no matter what variety of lacunosa you get. And I have 13 different varieties, so I can pretty much back that up. The bloom size may differ slightly, maybe, but the blooms are pretty much the same. This is an easy care plant. It is easy to find. They're selling them in big box stores and have for a few years. So if you find one in a big box store, there's your chance. If you've got friends who have lacunosas, it's a good way to get started. The varieties include variegation, non-variegation, inner, outer, all kinds of different stuff. But for the most part, Hoya lacunosas are sturdy, reliable little growers that can bloom for you very early on if you give them the right care. This one, it's not a really large plant. There's, as I said, buds down here. There's another peduncle forming over here. There we go. And this is not the first time this plant has bloomed. It's just a great, great plant. It's a great intro to Hoya. It's how many people start. You may look at this one and think it's not particularly special. I'm going to put some pictures over here of some of the other varieties. Whether it's leaf shape or variegation, there's something that you will find intriguing about lacunosa, and you should have one in your collection, at least one. So this is first up on our list of best beginner Hoyas. This is Hoya lacunosa. And the next best beginner Hoya, something a little different. This is Hoya spectatissima. Now, spectatissima is native to Yunnan province in China, and it was first collected in 2021 and published in 2023 in Phytokeys by, and I'm apologizing in advance, Bin Shu, Feng Wan, Gang Yao, Jia Xiang Wang, and it's a great little plant. It's available. It's out there. It might be on the upper end of the beginner plant spectrum, price spectrum, but it's really cool. Trying to keep it out of the tasty beverage. The leaves are very, very pretty. They're pubescent, which means they are fuzzy. And for me, this plant bloomed early on. It grew like crazy and bloomed early on. What you'll need to remember about this plant is that it does want its access to moisture. Don't let it dry out, and give it a decent amount of light. It doesn't require anything special. And as long as it has access to moisture, you're going to do fine. I have sadly let the reservoir run dry a couple of times, but that really hasn't slowed it down. It's just a great plant. I have pictures of the blooms I'm going to put over here, and the blooms are just beautiful. And the combination of neat leaves, easy and early blooming, easy care, make Hoya spectatissima a really, really good choice as a beginner Hoya. And the next best beginner Hoya, that didn't come out right, but the next plant on this list, it wouldn't be complete without a Hoya bella. This is a great plant. But some background. Hoya bella is native to India, to Assam, and through Myanmar. It was first published in 1848 in the Botanical Magazine or Flower Garden Displayed by William Jackson Hooker. And there's a note on the herbarium sheet that says Burma, so that's probably where it was first discovered by a Westerner. This is also sometimes known as Hoya lanceolata bella, but it's my understanding that that has now been synonymized into Hoya bella. This is it's turned into a beast of a plant. It's a great plant. I love my Hoya bella. If you're one of those people who thinks that Hoyas need to grow in terracotta and in potting soil, or not in potting soil, in cactus soil, then this is not going to work for you. Hoya bella needs its moisture. It does not want to dry out. It does not want to be waterlogged, so don't put it in potting soil and give it lots of water. Make up a nice airy mix and give it access to moisture. Mine is growing in a generic pond concoction and a self-watering pot. And it has grown like a weed. It doesn't require any kind of special care. Matter of fact, this one seems to prefer slightly lower light. It is sitting just off to the side of my southeast facing window. So the leaves get a little bit of very gentle early morning sun. And the rest of the time, it's just in a bright room. The leaves are really cute. They're very interesting. Will it focus for me? There we go. They're nice, they're pretty, they're lancelet-shaped leaves. Very cool. There are two other varieties. There is an outer variegated, which is hanging back here. It's sitting on a shelf. And I have an inner variegated. It's over there, sits next to this one. They are all equally easy to grow. I have found that the more variegation there is in the leaf, the more light it's going to want. So my inner variegated, which has a lot of variegation in the leaves, and I'll show you pictures of the leaves of all three over here on the side, gets a little bit more light. I have it closer to where some grow lights are, but it's not under grow lights. This is a really great plant. The blooms, and I'll put pictures of the blooms over here, are simple. And that appeals to me about it. They're just beautiful. And it will go through cycles of blooming many times throughout the year. This is usually very easy to find. As long as you provide it with a regular supply of moisture and don't let it dry out, it's going to do really well for you. This was one of the first Hoyas I bought. I made all my mistakes with this Hoya. So it can survive, provided that you overcome those mistakes in due course. Not in due course, get on with it, correct them. So make sure it's in a nice airy mix, that it's got access to moisture, that it's got gentle light, and Hoya Bella is going to do great for you. This one came from Plants Our Life shop on Etsy, and this is Hoya Bella. Now, the next one on this list is going to surprise some people. It actually kind of surprised me at first until I thought about my experience with it. And it's like, yeah, that's a good beginner Hoya, and one that Hoya beginners are going to be interested in. This is Hoya decipulae. Now, decipulae is native to Sumatra in Indonesia. It was first collected in 2017 in West Lampung in Sumatra, and it was published in 2019 in Rainwardia by Sri Rahayu and Inggit Puji Astuti. And the name comes from the Latin word decipula. I'm still learning Latin. Got to set yourself a challenge, no matter how old you are. From decipula, which means to catch, ensnare, and trap or beguile. And it refers to those blossoms. Let's see if I can, come on. Focus for daddy. And I'll put some better pictures of them over here, some close-ups. There is, of course, it's me, so there is, of course, a story with this plant, and I'm not going to bore everybody with it again. But this is a thin-leafed Hoya, and it has grown like crazy for me. This is just a year old, and it's already, that's probably 24 inches tall. And if I get out my 24 inches is about 61 centimeters. It blooms regularly. It has put off a new vine here that already has 2 peduncles on it. The main vine has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 peduncles in various forms of growth. The leaves are very cool. They have texture. They have a little bit of splash in them, and I'll put close-ups on the side. And this is another one of those, if you think that you need to be growing these in cactus soil and bark, you're not going to do well with this plant. But if you give it a good airy mix, whether it's pon or whether it's an organic mix, and give it a supply of moisture, I'm going to suggest self-watering pots. Yeah, this plant is going to do really well for you, and it's going to bloom, and it's going to give you really neat blooms. That when you point to this plant, when you're talking to your friends or your plant friends, they're going to look at those blossoms and they're going to say, oh, I get it. Okay, that's really cool. It's just given me no trouble. It grows like crazy. So provided you give it the care it needs, and again, this is not living in a grow tent. This is not living in a cabinet. It's out in my plant room in ambient temperatures and ambient humidity for this room. I keep the humidity in this room, well, right now it's at 39%, which means I need to fill up the humidifier, but I don't have the humidity go over 50% in this room. So it can do fine for you without any special setups. It lives over here on the floor in the fallout from one of my grow shelves. And I ended up with this plant through a little mix-up, but I'm certainly glad I did. It has exceeded all of my expectations. It's a really, really fun plant and absolutely suited for beginners. This one came from TQ Hoyas on Etsy, and this is Hoya decipulae, or decipulae. I'm still not good on my Latin pronunciations yet. Decipulae. And my next monster, and monster it has become, is Hoya multiflora. Now, Hoya multiflora is native to Bangladesh, Brunei, Cambodia, South Central and Southeast China, Assam in India, Borneo, Java, Papua, Sulawesi, and Sumatra in Indonesia, Laos, Malaya, Sabah, and Sarawak in Malaysia, Myanmar, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, and was first published in 1823. And I usually try and read the names of the publications in their native language. I'm not always good at it, but I give it a try. But this one was too much. So the English translation of the title of the work was Catalog of some of the most remarkable zoo internal and exotic plants to be found in the National Botanical Gardens at Buitenzorg, compiled by C.L. Bloom, MD, Director of the Botanical Gardens, Batavia, Jakarta. So maybe you understand why I chickened out and did it in English. This is often known as the shooting star Hoya, and I don't like nicknames like that because it doesn't tell you anything, but I'll pick pictures over here of why it's called that and why we grow it, and it's the blooms. They're absolutely fabulous. And you will get blooms early on with this plant. I think I got this plant several years ago, and it arrived in either the end of December or the beginning of January. Traveling in the cold did not seem to faze it. It settled right in and got to growing. Now, the leaves are nothing staggering. They're pretty. They do have a texture. They are beautiful dark green color. But we grow this for the blooms. And this one has bloomed early on. Right now, there's 3 active peduncles, but there are a couple more over here. It blooms regularly. The peduncles the blooms in the peduncles are just amazing. It's such a fun plant. This is another one. It's great beginner Hoya. Best beginner Hoya because it's really easy, but not if you try and do the cactus soil and bark thing. This wants an airy mix. It wants regular access to water. It's a thin-leafed Hoya, although the leaves are somewhat thicker than the decipulae we just looked at, but it wants its access to moisture. If you screw up on the water, it will blast the buds, but they'll come back. It's not a crisis. You'll feel bad the first time. The first peduncle on this one blasted all the buds the first time it bloomed, but it came back strong and it's been strong ever since. It grows in ambient conditions, so it grows out in the plant room. It's not under grow lights. My southeast window is here, and it's just off to the side, so it gets a very little bit of late morning sun, and it gets some fallout from the grow shelf that's over here. And as long as I keep it watered well, it does really great. This is a good beginner Hoya. Just be prepared. I mean, again, this one is almost 2 feet tall. What did I say, 61 centimeters? So it's going to grow for you once you get it established. The only caveat is it's messy. It's a dripper. It drips lots of nectar. And when it blasts the buds or when the blooms die, they're all going to be here. And there's, for example, on this peduncle, I would bet there's 15. And on this one, I would bet there's another 15 and maybe 20 on this one. So it is a little messy, but it's so worth it. The first time this one blooms for you, you're just going to be thrilled. And you can come here and tell us about it because none of your friends will appreciate at all. Mine didn't. They could, I posted the pictures and they all sent nice little notes and said like, oh, that's so pretty. Yeah, if you only knew. This is a really great beginner Hoya. If you're worried about you not being able to take care of it as a beginner, don't worry about that. Just ask any questions you need to ask and don't treat it like a desert succulent. That's your big warning for this one. Give it a good mix, give it access to moisture, and this is going to turn into a beautiful plant for you. There are variegated varieties, and they're fine. For me, the blooms are enough, and I don't need to deal with variegation or even search it out. This one has been so much fun, and it can be for you too. This is Hoya. This one came from Wishlist Plan Treasures on Etsy, and this is Hoya multiflora. Moving that multiflora around. It's in pond, so that pot weighs a lot. Now the next one up might come as something of a surprise to folks, but my experience made me put it on this list. And this is Hoya davidcummingii. Now, davidcummingii is native to the Philippines. It was first published in 1995 in Fraterna, Official Bulletin for the International Hoya Association, by Robert Dale Kloppenberg. And I found this one at a nursery here in southern New England. And I thought, okay, let's give it a try. The leaves are pretty. They're nice. They're fine. I've got a little bit of an outer margin. Let's see if I can make that work. Yeah. So a little bit of an outer margin, nice green color. The reason it's on this list, actually there are two reasons why it's on this list. This one grows for me really, really well. It grows quickly. The other reason it's on this list is it bloomed early on. I probably had the first blooms within the first 3 months. And the blooms, as you can see from the pictures I'm going to put over here, are just beautiful. They're just like in your face, magenta and gold. Really, really great. The other thing about the blooms is the scent. The scent is slightly sweet, but spicy. And you'll know, I knew this plant was in bloom before I ever saw the blossoms. And I had the door to the Hoya room closed and I could smell it out in the hall. And it was like, you catch that little bit of a scent and you think, oh, something's in bloom. I got to go find it now. So it took some digging. It wasn't where I thought the blooms were going to be. And this plant has bloomed regularly and easily and has grown well. And boy, oh boy, this has been a fun plant. I am really, really glad I bought this one just for the fun of it. I know it's not staggering and beautiful with all kinds of variegation and nifty leaves, but the way it grows and the blooms made up for all of that. And those are the reasons I put this one on the best beginner Hoya list. This one I got from Logie's in Connecticut. And if you're in the area, you should go visit. It's so much fun. Not a plug for Logie's, but like if you deserve a midwinter treat, and yeah, go to Logie's, make a day trip. This one came from Logie's, and this is Hoya davidcummingii. And the next one on my list is probably going to surprise some people as well. This is Hoya retusa. Now, Hoya retusa is native to West India through the Himalayas. So it's a cooler growing Hoya. It was first published in 1852 in Hooker's Journal of Botany and Kew Garden Miscellany by Nicole Alexander Dalzell. And I put off buying this plant for years. Every time I saw it in the stores, and I saw it everywhere. Anybody who sells Hoyas, except for the big box stores, but anybody who sells Hoyas is going to have some of these sitting around. And they always looked terrible, like they hadn't been watered. And it wasn't that they hadn't been watered. Most of them were growing in the wrong mix. So I finally decided I was going to try this and brought it home. And I love this plant. This is really, really cool. It's just been so much fun. I love the texture. I love these bizarre little frog foot leaves. Although, don't get confused with that. There is a Hoya known as frogfoot, but yeah, I like the ending of these leaves. They're very cool. They're firm, even though they seem kind of small. And this one blooms. And the blooms, they're sort of reminiscent of Hoya bella, which is another reason why I like them. But they're beautiful. And I've got pictures. This one has done very, very well. While it may appreciate and do well in cooler temperatures, it's going to want a supply of moisture. So I have this one growing in an organic mix, which is cocoa husk chunks, fine bark, sphagnum moss, pumice, and a little bit of tree fern fiber. So it's a combination of things that all bring some moisture retention at various levels and airiness at various levels. And it's in a self-watering pot. And if you've got a shelf that needs something to happen there, or you've got some kind of pedestal or a table that needs something happening there, Hoya retusa is very, very cool. As long as you give it the moisture it wants, and I've been somewhat lax sometimes, and it will drop a few, if you get a few leaves, it'll go yellow on you when you haven't been being good. But it'll bounce back. It grows like crazy. I am always having to dig this one out of other plants or the plant shelves next to it. It doesn't require any special care. It's in ambient conditions, which in my Hoya room is temperatures around, I'm going to say mid 70. So they get up to 74, 75 during the day, and they might cool down to 68 in the evening. The humidity I try and keep, as I said, around 45 to 50%. And this one does fine with that. As I mentioned, it's a cooler growing Hoya, so it's going to be able to withstand, some extremes in that. This is just fun. The reason it's on the list is you can find it almost every place I went had a retusa. It was cheap. They're not terribly inexpensive. And it bloomed for me. So those 3 points, we're all there. And it's not difficult. Just find a self-watering pot, learn about self-watering, and set it up in that. And this is going to be a great Hoya for your collection. This one came from Briggs in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. And this is Hoya retusa. And those of you who have been counting have noticed that I've gotten to my 7, and some of you are thinking, but wait, what about? And so I have some honorable mentions. And that includes this Hoya calistophylla, which, although it's hiding, is just starting to bloom. It's very pretty, it's very cool, it's a very, very neat plant. This is one of the reasons that people get into Hoyas when they see stuff like this. And that's why Hoya calistophylla, Hoya calistophylla kalimantan, Hoya finlaysonii, and Hoya finlaysonii chicken farm are on the list, and Hoya matilde. All of those plants are usually very readily available. They're usually not terribly expensive, and they're not terribly demanding. Again, my plants all grow in ambient conditions, so I don't need a cabinet, I don't have a grow tent, none of that kind of stuff, and they're doing fine. They can take a little bit longer than some of the others to bloom, and my calistophylla and my finlaysonii definitely took a while to get established and get going. The calistophylla kalimantan did really well for me, like from the get-go, it was a grower. And the same with finlaysonii chicken farm, it was a grower. Once I got my Hoya matilde settled, it did really, really well. And it has bloomed for me several times, so that's why it too is on my honorable mention list. So, if you gotta have some veiny leaves, then calistophylla or finlaysonii are good beginner Hoyas. Be prepared that they might take you a little bit longer, but they're good beginner Hoyas. And I know there's some people out there going, but wait, what about, and they're thinking all the other Hoyas. So I have a short list of your next Hoyas to buy. This is after you've had some success and they've done really well for you. It's not that these Hoyas are difficult or bad plants. It's that they're not going to tick all those prices or those points on my list. They may tick some of them, but not enough of them to really be a great beginner Hoya. And on that list, oddly enough, is carnosa. You can find Hoya carnosa everywhere. You can find them in the big box stores. You can probably find them in grocery stores at this point. They are a great plant. They're a really good plant for your next purchase. The reason I'm steering people away from it as a beginner Hoya is that they're not going to bloom for you in the first year. That'd be really rare. They're not going to bloom for you in the second year. That'd be really rare. They grow fairly well. I mean, they're good growers, and you can find some beautiful variegated varieties of carnosa or some interesting ones. This is my Hoya carnosa compacta. And the reason, I mean, everybody loves this one. That's such a funky, cool, weird plant that new Hoya people want to get one. A lot of people report this plant as being a really slow grower, and I need you to have some good growth and success early on. You don't need a slow one to start with. Now, I will include that that's not been my experience with this plant. I got this a few months ago, and this on this vine is all new growth within the last, I'm going to say, 4 to 6 months. There's new growth on this. There's 3 vines in here. There's new growth on this one and new growth on this one as well. But many, many people talk about this being a slow-growing carnosa, even slower than regular carnosa. Keep tuning in to see how I do with this one. Right now, I don't find that to be true, but save carnosa for your next purchase, whether it's carnosa or carnosa compacta. Next on my save for your next purchase, it's over here. I hope he's in view. And that's Hoya obovata. It's a really cool plant. Those big round leaves are beautiful. They can get some nice splash. There's variegated varieties. It takes a while to get going. It also has a reputation of being something of a slow grower. That was my experience at first, but once I got it in a good setup, it grows really well. It's bloomed for me several times, but it's not the one to learn about Hoyas with. It's your next one. It's a great plant, love it a lot, but save that for your next one. Now, another one is Hoya linearis. And I've got one, I'll try and put a picture over here. Hoya linearis is a beautiful plant. It's just stunning. It blooms, the blooms are beautiful. It's a very cool plant. It's not the one to learn with. It requires a little bit more attention. It's going to require that you have some experience with watering regularly and appropriately. Mine is in a self-watering pot, and that just lets me keep ahead of it. It's a great plant. You can usually find them around, although they often look really, when you find them in the store, they look kind of nasty. They're fine. Save it for your next purchase. It's not a beginner plant. It's your next Hoya. And finally, I'm going to lump them together because there's all kinds of confusion about who's what and what's what, is Weyette or Kentiana. They're on the list for your next purchase because they're readily available. Again, big box stores, that big plant company has them. They're out there. You can get a big pot of Weyette for not a lot of money. It grows pretty well. Mine took a while to bloom. And unless you find one of the variegated ones, they are just kind of, and I'll put pictures of the leaves over here, they are just kind of plain. They're nice. I have them both. I think they're great. They have bloomed for me, but save it for your next purchase. And this week's question for the comment section is, I'm going to repeat something I did about 6 months ago because it was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. So I'm going to run it again for the end of the year. And that's, where are you? So in the comments below, give me, not your address, because I'm not mailing you anything and I'm not coming to visit you. Tell me the city, the state or province, if that's appropriate, and the country where you watch, where you live, where you watch my program. And then at the end of the year, the last video for the year, I'll run the list of everybody who submits. It was very interesting to see and to think that there are people literally all over the world who are watching this video. I don't know if they're watching this one, but watching my videos. And it was so interesting for me. So just include your city, state or province, and country. And we'll put together a list for the end of the year. And as always, I want to thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of time with me this week's end. Please remember to click that thumbs up like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. All of those things help my channel grow, and it's how you can help my channel grow. A number of the products that you've seen me use are available through my Amazon storefront, and there's a link in the description below. I receive a small commission on the sales, and it helps support my Hoya habit, but it doesn't increase your price at all. Or there's a thanks button down here, and that's all run through YouTube, and those contributions are appreciated. I'm going to put links to a couple more videos over here, and enjoy the rest of your week's end.